Afternoon. Hopefully everyone can hear me. My name is Lindsay Bernal, and I coordinate the creative writing program here at the University of Maryland. Welcome to the first Writers Here and Now reading of the spring 2022 semester. And again, thank you so much for being with us. Today, we are delighted to have Cristina Rivera Garza and Mitchell S. Jackson with us. This reading has been scheduled and rescheduled, and we're really excited that we made it happen this semester. So thank you to both of our readers for sharing their work and their time with us today. On behalf of the Creative Writing Program, the Jiménez-Porter Writers House, and the Center for Literary and Comparative Studies, I'd like to thank the sponsors and collaborators who make this series possible. The Department of English, the CLCS co-directors, Tita Chico and Karen Nelson, the College of Arts and Humanities, our Marketing and Communications Coordinator, Rosemary Grant, and finally, Professor of Electrical Engineering, Robert Newcomb, for decades of support. The Department of English, the Creative Writing Program, and the Jiménez-Porter Writers House acknowledge that we are on the ancestral lands of the Piscataway people, who were among the first in the Western Hemisphere. This indigenous land was stolen by European colonists. We make this acknowledgement out of respect for the Piscataway elders and ancestors past and present. Please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that bring us together here at the University of Maryland. Cristina Rivera Garza will read first today, introduced by Kathryn Karoly. Then Mitchell S. Jackson will read, introduced by Rion Almicar Scott. Take it away, Kat.
Hello, everyone, and happy Friday. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you so much to Mitchell and Cristina for being here to share your writing. So, in the Taiga Syndrome, the most recent of Cristina Rivera Garza's experimental novels to be translated into English, we encounter a retired female detective searching for a woman who has left her husband and disappeared with another man into a boreal forest where people go mad. The detective tracks the missing woman by studying her telegrams, interviewing villagers, making reports. She tries to solve the mystery by immersing herself in the forest, philosophizing her own reactions to the strange landscape, imagining what the missing woman would have done at each landmark. Each telegram represents a series of decisions, circumstances, bringing her the present truth. Rivera Garza considers how the environment informs our senses and how our senses react and manifest as emotions, moving from pure animal instinct into emotional human instinct. How the wilderness reroots us in the primal, stripping us of the need for logic. Rivera Garza is not interested in answers, as her protagonist states in the beginning and repeats throughout the book. No one knows why anyone leaves, and no one understands their own decisions. The Taiga Syndrome forces us to consider language itself as a means of connecting and deciphering objects, thoughts, events, memory, as a detective mode. Rivera Garza chooses fragmented lyric, images, sounds, and sensation over narration, and the boreal forest, fairy tale forest reinforces the human desire for mystery. Cristina Rivera Garza is a recipient of numerous awards, including, but not limited to, a 2020 MacArthur Genius Grant for fiction. Her many books have been translated into more than 5 languages from the original Spanish. Rivera Garza was born in Mexico and has lived in the US since '89. She is Distinguished Professor in Hispanic Studies at the University of Houston, where she leads the graduate Spanish language creative writing concentration. Please join me in welcoming her. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for that generous introduction, Kathryn. And thank you to the University of Maryland, to the Department of English, to the Creative Writing Program for the invitation. Thank you, Lindsay. And I know Ada is around there too, so thank you, Ada. What I'm going to be doing today, I'm going to be reading a short story from this book, New and Selected Stories, that is going to be out very soon in April with Dorothy Project. I will read. Oh, and I'm very happy I'm reading alongside Mitchell Jackson too. So this is just a perfect occasion. Thank you again. I'll start reading The Carpathian Mountain Woman. This is a short story translated from the Spanish into English by Alex Ross. It starts with an epigraph. Write this. We have burned all their villages. Write this. We have burned all the villages and the people in them. We have adopted their customs and their manner of dress. This is from the poem Sun by Michael Palmer in his book Codes Appearing. I first came here 20 years ago. I answered softly as I pretended not to notice his intense blue gaze. He didn't believe me. That's what I assumed, that he didn't believe me. So I went on to tell him I'd arrived on the back of a great donkey with a bit of food and a couple of notebooks. He put a blade of grass between his teeth and said nothing. The hint of smile between his lips, the sky as blue as his eyes, the wind. And you've been dressing like a man ever since? I remember how he had taken me violently, a stray longing in each hand, a private fury, his fingers like can openers in my mouth. How long I had gone without seeing an artifact like that. I remembered the smell of his sweat, vaguely carnivorous, and the bitter taste of his cheeks, still bent over the river and still pretending not to see his intense gaze. I told him it was better to live alone as a man. He didn't ask me why. I said that. He picked up his small leather satchel and started to leave. I counted his steps without turning to look at him. When he got to number 23, he hesitated. He turned around. Will you wait for me? He asked. Yes, I said, still bent over the river water. I put my hand in the current and pulled out a smooth, round stone. I held it in front of me as if it were a mirror. Then I slipped it into the right-hand pocket of my trousers. I thought I would want to remember that afternoon. I thought the stone was in place of the stranger. I never knew why I had mentioned the number 20 years. I also didn't know what it was he'd made me promise to wait for. Before choosing my destiny, I had read about them. A strange book, half history, half legend, a book from a library in the city. I read it immoderately, as I used to do in those days, with the moistened tip of my index finger perpetually poised to turn the page. I forgot to eat. I only stopped occasionally to take a sip of water, but I never actually drank it. As soon as I put the rim of the glass to my lips, I would become distracted again. Something urgent called me from across the room, and I answered the call. Before closing the book, I had already made up my mind. I would leave that place, that kitchen, that library, the city. I would become someone else, one of them. It's difficult to explain why one does the thing one does, but everything happened just like it does in books. I left the place, and almost without a plan, I showed up in a small village where they needed men. I put on my new clothes and committed myself to a life of celibacy, and they, who were so few, bowed their heads when I passed. The stranger showed up in front of my door one day at around noon. He didn't arrive, as I once had, on the back of a donkey, but on the battered seat of a military vehicle, a mud-spattered windshield, 4 thick tires, a torn canvas roof. The letters on the door made no sense to me, but the words he spoke to me did. He asked me for water, and since I didn't move, he opened his canteen and turned it upside down. Do you understand me? He repeated with growing exasperation. I need water. I hadn't seen anyone like him for a long time. His gestures, so childlike, so unnecessary, moved me. He seemed to be afraid of dying. Where are you from? I asked him, trying to make him feel less uncomfortable as he stood there in the doorway. Perhaps I was already trying to dissuade him, to distract him. I've never known how to get rid of people. When he gave a start, which he attempted to conceal, I realized he couldn't see me well. My house, like all mountain houses, was small and dark. Later, he referred to it as the shack. Cool in the summer, warm in the winter. That's why our houses are that way. So you are a woman, he whispered in a tone expressing both surprise and amusement. His body was blocking the sun, so I couldn't see him well either. I didn't know how to answer. Then he crossed the threshold, a long and voluminous stride. I was very slow to react. He talked about the war. When he finished gulping down the water, he wiped his mouth with his sleeve and sat down at the table. He asked for food. He asked for more. What's that? He asked when he heard the sound of the bells. A mass, I said, as I set a plate with pieces of meat in front of him. Part of a funeral, I murmured later. He ate the same way he had drunk a few minutes earlier, eagerly, voraciously. He ate the food with his hands and he lifted it to his mouth without turning to look at anything else. Then he chewed and swallowed noisily. Then he sucked his fingers clean. When he had had his fill, he began to talk. He lit a pipe and talked without stopping about the war. The words flowed from his mouth just as the food had entered it a few moments earlier in a deluge. He told about the years of his life. He saw the adolescent he had been, thoughtful and serene. He heard gunshots, the echo of gunshots. He felt thirst. A relentless sun once more wrinkled his skin, blinded his eyes, dried his lips. He swallowed dirt. He desperately craved the taste of salt on his tongue. He was hypnotized by the color of fire. He walked for entire nights, climbing hills and descending them again, soaked with urine and with fear. He shot. He closed his eyes and shot many times. You don't know what it is like, he said. And then, without waiting for a reply, he continued, the cold, the filth, the smell of rotten flesh, death. He relived it all again. A small body beneath the infinite, maddening sky. You are never more vulnerable than when you are under the sky, he insisted. I offered him some liquor because he seemed to need it. The noise of the bottle touching the wood broke his concentration. He looked at me again. He must have been wondering who I was, what I was doing here, but he didn't ask any questions. He drank the liquor in small sips. After a while, he fell asleep with his head on the table. Every forest always has another forest within. The one on the inside is the mythical, enchanted forest found in fairy tales. Living in the outside forest, however, is not easy. Life in the mountains requires effort discipline, sacrifice. Above all, you need to have good hands. And it never hurts to have a level head on your shoulders, one that's used to solitude. You need to cut down trees, plant seeds, use frigid water from the rivers. There can be fires. There are bears and eagles and other frightening animals. Sometimes, towards the end of winter, everything is covered with snow, and you have to walk on the snow, keep moving forward. Sometimes it's good to be able to recognize the sound of a breaking branch. It's good to walk slowly on dried leaves. Sometimes you take a deep breath. Sometimes everything stops. But more than anything else, there is work in the forest, lots of work. Fairy tales rarely mention that. And you can do all that by yourself? He asked me later. I told him the truth. I told him no, that I couldn't do all that by myself. And my answer seemed to satisfy him. Do the local men come to help you? As often as I help them, I told him defiantly. Or it seemed to me that my tone of voice was defiant. He returned to the topic many times, each time from a different angle, as if he couldn't find the best way to ask what he wanted to ask. Every forest always has another forest within, I murmured, when he got out of bed and went to the window and stood there with an attitude of expectation. He stayed that way, very still, for a long time. When he turned around to look at me, I lowered my eyes. Then I covered my shoulders with a blanket. Then I said, "You shouldn't be here." Why does someone grab a pair of notebooks, take a long trip on a dilapidated hulk of a bus, get off in a distant province, and then travel on the back of a donkey for days and days in order to reach the remotest spot imaginable? I don't know. Why does someone choose a forest? I can't answer that either. There is the green, of course, the abundance of greens that are the color green. You have to learn how to see. There is the fresh air and the sky, the solitude of the sky. No one is ever more defenseless than when they know they are alone under the sky. The possibility of remaining silent for hours at a time, days at a time, months at a time. The possibility of forgetting how to write, the possibility of not speaking. There are the extended, callous, dry, brutal hands that can't take up tools to cut, plant, plow. There is the voice, deep, the echo, also deep, the possibility of saying, "We have burned all the villages. We have burned all the villages and the people in them. We have adopted their customs and the way of dress." The laughter inside the church walls during the rites, the slow walking down the aisle, the shaking of hands, the endless bowing of heads. There is the crying of babies being born, a deep echo, another one. There is the beginning, the oldest forest, the forest inside the forest. That promise, listen to this. There is the inescapable fact that we have burned all the villages and the people in them. You can live in the forest without having a theory of the forest. During burials, when I join the funeral procession, and later when I look inside the coffin of the dead person's face, it's impossible to avoid wondering if it's worth it, if all of this is worth it. The problem, as always, is the children and the old people. The problem is always the most vulnerable ones, the ones who one fine day abandon the joke and run as fast as they can among the trees, looking for a little light. Sometimes it gets so dark under the trees and so cold. The problem is the ones who lose their minds. You stand there looking at the dark pathways and you wonder about the taste of liquor in the mouth of the man who shovels dirt over all that. There is a moth that flutters in the air, the blade of the tool that has severed the leg. The snow is falling. The nature of snow is to fall. There was snow before. There will be snow afterward. The forest will survive all of that, all of these. In front of the falling house, the illuminated face, an idol. The nature of houses is to fall. The noise of the axe, soon we will disappear. There is an urgent need to go to the tree, the amputated leg, the trail of blood on the snow, a pair of footprints. I told him I hadn't been in the city for many years. The last one I saw was the one I'd left behind. Remembering its lights made me blink rapidly. Then I laughed. I never went back, I said, stating the obvious. Then I spat out of the left side of my mouth and took another swing at the firewood with my axe. A heavy thud, the smell of sweat, a flying bird. The stranger stepped back. It was the first time he did that. Show me your hands, he ordered instead of asking. Do you see them? He asked derisively, pointing to my splinters and my broken nails. You could never live in the city looking like that. His presumption annoyed me, especially since it was false. It bothered me that he thought I might want to return, that I would be interested in going back to all that. A woman with red hands, a Carpathian mountain woman. So I turned away from him and continued chopping the firewood into smaller and smaller pieces. I could hear my own breathing, my inhaling and exhaling. I concentrated on the movement of my wrists. I had to be taut and perfect without vacillating. The shifting of my weight from one leg to the other, the vertical length of my arms, my back. Soon I settled into a familiar rhythm. My body inside its own choreography, my body inside the forest within. You shouldn't have come back, I whispered, my voice barely audible against the clamor of my agitated breathing. Why did you? People migrate, it's natural, he answered, also with his back turned. While it was happening, while all of this was taking place, I imagined the bodies engulfed in flames. Those visions interrupted my dreams. They interrupted my waking hours as well. They interrupted my theory of the forest. They never learn our language, said some, in an attempt at self-justification, and all of this inside the church. They looked down at our dances, argued others, as the bells rang softly. Did you notice they never bow their heads? The forest is always expanding. People kept asking the same questions, offering the same justifications. It didn't matter that others spoke of connecting rivers. Any attempt to explain about context, about the vital importance of context for the dissemination of our language, fell on deaf ears. There is something larger. Would we understand ourselves without others who don't understand us? There is something that contains us. These types of questions always provoked a general irritation, widespread grumbling. Within the church, one heard, we burn their villages. It was a deep echo, a very soft voice. We burned the people in them. We adopted their customs, their way of dress. I looked down and found my hands orphaned on my lap. All around me, the word wretched, touch this. Civilization is always expanding, and so is the beyond. Between them is the forest. I know the green, the sky, the snow which falls, the funeral bells, the blood, the footprint. There is a man in the forest who is a woman. There is a woman, a forest. I don't know if they did it for me, but I've always wondered about it. It isn't easy to guess other people's intentions. 3 more had died, 2 girls and a boy. There were so few of us. Scarcity leads to strange behavior. The darkness under the trees, perpetual isolation, living beyond the pale. Panic is a disease, that's clear. They kept touching the children's foreheads just to make sure the fever would end with them. They tried to decipher their last words. It was a mother who pointed her finger at the stranger. Panic is a disease, which is a drama. Her crying was a bladed tool that cut me in two. I had lived among them. In fact, for many years, I had served them well. They had the kind of cautious affection for me that one feels towards someone who, because she arrived late, will never penetrate the mystery of the origin. But they didn't view me with suspicion. They bowed their heads when I passed. They sought my opinion. When I broke a leg, they took care of my farm. One summer, they pulled me out of the well I had fallen into. They gave me 3 lambs, which later became 7, and then 15. Eventually, they became wool and also chunks of meat on pewter plates. We ate together. We swallowed in unison. We weren't intimidated by the gleam of each other's teeth or by the weight of our hands on the wooden table. At this table, we studied their dress and their customs in my notebooks. It was here that we leafed through the books and saw the pictures. It was here that we planned the fires. I've spoken their language for as long as I can remember. Don't ask me why someone chooses a forest. I don't have an answer. Finally, he said, he'd remember. He said he'd seen me a long time ago, months or maybe even years before my departure. He recognized the notebooks. He said, the black covers, their unusual size, the hands that held them firmly. Do you remember that? He asked. Naturally, I answered that I didn't. That didn't make him stop. He said he'd been there on the opposite side of the sidewalk, standing in the drizzle, while I waited with the notebooks pressed against my chest for the bus that would take me far away. Now I remember that day perfectly, he assured me. Of course, I shook my head vigorously at this. I must have looked at him with enormous eyes because suddenly he burst out in wild laughter. A bird that flies. I started to laugh without knowing exactly why. This kind of laughter, which soon turns to hilarity, usually leaves me feeling desolate. There is a moment in every story when it's possible to suddenly see what will happen next. I saw it then and there, in the middle of a story invented by a stranger to create a context for a moment that never existed. Inside my desolation, after the laughter. That's why I kept silent. Because of this, outside, the snow would soon be falling again, silently. Little by little, the footsteps could become audible. The rest would happen in a flurry, the struggle, the bladed tool in the air, its irrevocable fall, the body parts, the trickle of blood, the footprints. He had said, before his wild fit of laughter, that he was like a person who tells a story only to have the privilege or the power. This, he also said, to introduce a foreign element into it, something that doesn't quite fit. I saw him then. I used my hands to expose his face. I saw him absolutely. The last day, the day of the drizzle, it didn't exist. I murmured. It was only then that he kept silent. It's difficult to explain how one can remain still under the snow for so long. Difficult to say, these are my knees, this is your torso, your thigh, these are your fingers, these are the eyes you looked at me with. People migrate, it's natural. It's always difficult to describe what an axe does. Difficult to witness the outstretched finger of the mother, and difficult to hear her howling on the other side of the window, and difficult to break in two very slowly when one understands the verdict. It's difficult to remain still with fists clenched and be a witness to the facts. The branch that rustles, the bird, it is difficult to be under the sky. When I secretly murmured the word Carpathian, I was able to see a forest, a blue sky, and falling snow. I was a girl then, and that's the truth. Thank you.
Hi guys. I wish we could all be in person. Happy to be here and hear these wonderful readings. I'm gonna introduce Mitchell Jackson here. I wish I could recreate for you the excitement of 2013 when Mitchell S. Jackson released his first novel, The Residue Years. It was something that went beyond regular book buzz or even word of mouth. Writers and readers seemed to be bearing witness to a voice that didn't just dazzle, didn't just have a curious maturity for a first novel, wasn't just starkly original, but it had gravity. And oh, that gravity. Each sentence defies gravity. Nearly each of Mitchell Jackson's sentences have a heft and weight of their own, and each seems to float. Jackson is not a purveyor of the utilitarian sentence. Each sentence is a prose poem. The effect is to translate the unique nature of Black Oregon, a state that once attempted to constitutionally ban Black people, into words. Words that don't often go together, but in Jackson's hands, they just sound good together. Since that time, Jackson's short stories and essays have only grown more assured. In his work is often a dance with the visual. Jackson asks us to imagine a scene or an image, or he paints a word portrait. The pieces that make up his nonfiction book, Survival Math, began, he tells us, with photographs of the faces of the Black men, his family members, that he so lovingly profiles. Inherent in all this picture painting is a demand that we look, that we observe the contours and nuances of Black life as it was lived in the 20th century and as it is lived now in the 21st. He wants us to see the grooves as well as the cracks. He wants us to gaze on Black America's sorrows and joys with the same admiration and love that he does. Jackson's pictures are not just snapshots, they're oil paintings of great complexity and unmatched beauty. Mitchell S. Jackson is the winner of the 2021 Pulitzer Prize in feature writing and the 2021 National Magazine Award in feature writing. His debut novel, The Residue Years, received wide critical praise and won a Whiting Award and the Ernest J. Gaines Prize for Literary Excellence. The Residue Years was also finalist for the Center for Fiction Florida Dunnan First Novel Prize, the Penn Hemingway Award for Debut Fiction, and the Hurston Wright Legacy Award. Jackson's honors include fellowships and awards from John Simon Guggenheim Foundation, Creative Capital, and the New York Public Library's Cullman Center, the Lannan Foundation, Ford Foundation, PEN America, TED, the New York Foundation for the Arts, and the Center for Fiction. His writing has been featured on This American Life, on the cover of the New York Times Book Review, Time Magazine, Esquire Magazine, and Mary Claire Magazine, as well as the New Yorker, the New York Times, Harper's Magazine, Harper's Bazaar Magazine, the Paris Review, the Washington Post Magazine, the Guardian, and elsewhere. His nonfiction book, Survival Math, Notes on an All-American Family, was published in 2019 and named the best book of the year by 15 publications, including NPR, Time Magazine, the Paris Review, The Root, Kirkus Review, and BuzzFeed. Jackson is a columnist for Esquire Magazine. His next novel, John of Watts, is forthcoming from Farrar, Straus and Giroux. And I want to add something this official bio leaves out. Mitchell Jackson is the best dressed dude in lit, hands down. It's not an argument. We're missing out because this format does not allow us to see his fit, particularly what kind of shoes he's wearing. His drip game is fabulous. Ladies and gentlemen, my friend, Mitchell S. Jackson.
Oh man, that was the best. That was the best. Man, thank you so much, Rion. You know, you go somewhere and then somebody gives you an introduction and you know that your reading is not going to live up to the introduction. And this is one of those times. I want to say thank you to the department. Thank you to Lindsay. Thank you to Karen for the perseverance. Really happy to be with, and honored to be with Cristina. I am going to read 3 from 3 different pieces. And the reason I'm doing that is because one, I feel very self-conscious when I read one long piece, but the other reason is I feel that we're writers, and one of the things that I'm always trying to work through is POV. So the first thing I'm going to read is, like Cristina, a first person narrative. The second thing that I'm going to read is from Survival Map, which is a second person narrative. And then the third thing is from something new that I'm working on, John and Watts, which is in third person, which is the thing that feels least strong to me, or natural, I guess I should say. So this first thing is from, it's a short story that I wrote probably 2010, but the reason I'm reading is because I had been working with this mentor, and he had told me that I had an ear, and it was like, okay, let me just go start practicing my jump shot now. So somebody told me I can shoot free throws, and this was me shooting 100 free throws. So head down, palm up. It's hard to see Unc in the shade, with his being the same shade as the shade, but you can always depend to watch his mouth to track that gold tooth, a glinting last to last extravagance. It's position, not possession, Unc says, not possession, but position, he says, and swanks into view. Unc throws contemplative eyes to the sky. They're the familial bug eyes, impressive eyes, so big he might see the future or maybe even another dimension. The man motions me closer, flaunting the only ring he wears, probably his only ring left to wear, a pinky joint set with an ambit of murky diamonds, and warns we can't let this high grade reach the wrong ears. Then he pauses for what's likely the sake of suspense, pauses and says, you got to have tools, goddamn you mean. Meaning your rides, your crib, your clothes, your gold, you got to, but all you've got is a molehill without a mouthpiece. He points at his cracked lips, open with a sliver of space between them, a pipe smoker's lips, forever scorched. In those gorilla move, he says, I swear for God, try him and see, don't they get you nothing less than more of what you never wanted. That gorilla ain't about nothing, he says. A smart one comes from here, he says, and touches his temple. Never from here, he says. Unc assumes a southpaw stance, shakes miniature fists with abnormally big, unbruised knuckles, then switches to orthodox and whispers, God damn you, me again, for God only knows. Okay, now is as good a time as any to ask good people if you'd please, please preempt the hatrocity. He's my Unc, all right, my real blood relative. Say, nephew, Unc says, this how you play it. Soon as you knock one, you keep your head down and your palm up. Head down and palm up, he says, assuming the pose. He stands a while after, a Buddhist maybe, lanky limbs hanging, lank neck sprouting out of his weathered silk shirt, double creased slacks, second hand gaiter spraddled, big knuckled babyish hands unfurled to show nails long enough to dredge coke, sharp enough to cut steak. To be true, Unc is sympathetic almost with what the years have done to him, with what he's done to himself over the years, but with the way he yearns, he might make more years than us all, be the only one alive the next coming, which is unsuspecting as shit, considering advice you'd call unholy, or might couldn't. Don't turn down nothing but your collar, Unc advises, which helped him become the first and penultimate around our way to hustle a plane, though he now borrows hubcaps forever, hawks scrap metal for rent, and sends the mother of his youngest to a strip where the going rate is less than you drop on prime sirloin. Unc says, I swear for God again, for who knows why. And people, you can say or think what you will, but my Unc might not be, no, matter of fact, most likely ain't one of those old heads you can pay no never mind without it costing. Your rides, he says, hellified mouthpiece or not, just you try and knock one in a bucket. Just you try and knock one worth a damn without a couple of rides from the year of and at least one American made from when times was good. Unc says his bottom leaving tripped a weak run, but that's how it goes, he says. 1 minute you're up and the next, well, you know. He pitches his formidable bug eyes at me, eyes that can't anymore see past his past. He hops on a bench, plants a second-hand gator on the seat, and leaves another hovering. He rubs his puny hands over a head of semi-receding stubble and says that normally the high grade is sold, not told. But since I'm family and all, he'll accept an IOU and a pack of menthols. He laughs and frisks the capacious pockets of his double-creased slacks, pockets once laden with down payment enough for anything, but now most often filled with less than, with atoms, straight zeroth. Position, not possession, he says, and warns never capitulate in so many words. I mean, in so many words, the man says it. That's Unc, now me. My girl so bad, that to lay sight on her as if accepting a wound. And here among these strobes and kaleidoscopes of color, the early evening crowd can see what I see, and I see them willfully, achingly, damn near greedily receiving hurt from her. Unc asked me to point her out, and when I show him, he says, now that, I swear for God, is a gold mine. I say in so many words that I don't have the heart to ask, much less convince her. I tell him what I feel and so on, and he says that all of them is meant to be sent, but the ones that is, you can't keep from sending themselves. Nephew, Unc says, it's either in their nature or it ain't. My girl's a spectacle up there, syncopating and twirling and shimmying and stomping in heels tall enough to fall from and die. A semaphore for the sound. We sit tables away. How could I do anything but sit tables away while my girl dances a song, a song, a song? I watch her step down and hear the DJ ask us to give her a hand, calling her by the name she's named herself for here. The crowd claps, then stops all abrupt. The DJ tells us to hold tight for a quick intermission. And meantime, my girl sends me a smile of hers that's a constellation of white and leads one of the harm to a section reserved for special attention. What I don't tell Unc is I've accepted so many wounds from her, I might be experiencing the afterlife. Then again, I might not be marred enough for a rebirth. That's my first person part of a story. This next second person story is, that was fiction. I should have said that. Kind of fiction. The fiction I'm capable of writing. And this is nonfiction, which is still kind of always fiction. All right, so this is a survival file. If it were in a book, it would have a picture with it. This was the hip, slick, cool years. You sold the cocaine and your older brother the heroin, and both of you lived in a curious colored house out in the suburbs. You could claim this was the consequence of somebody burgling TVs and guns out of that house. Might contend it began days after the heist when you drop by the pad of a dude who buys your coke and see your Trinitron TV in it. You asked him where he copped the TV and he reveals he bought it from a white boy who you also sell dope. Your friend admits that the white boy furthermore sold him a gun which, as it turns out, was also stolen from your house. Well, ain't this a bitch, you say. You put an APB out for the white boy and obtain an address out in Southeast. You recruit your A-spoon coon and your younger brother and hop in a ride armed with pistols and a shotgun and wheel out to Southeast with half your hardening heart set on killing him. Soon your hodgepodge crew of hit men reach the address and, strapped, march onto the front porch. The house is lit and you can see people loafing inside it, see what looks like a family, not a one of whom resembles the white boy. It don't take long to glean you've been fed a bunk address for your slapdash crew to scramble stealth off the porch and into your ride for you to wheel back into Northeast whooping the whole way about what you'll do if when you find this thieving ass white boy. You cruise by a popular night spot, and lo and behold, the white boy's car is parked with him in it. You pull up on him, threaten him out of his car, and glare with your pistol drawn. You'll be thankful years later for the whisper in your spirit that won't let you kill him. But in the moment, you watch the white boy jerk as if to grab a gun, and your ace boon coon ram him through the front window of a nearby building. The two of them wrestle inside as you wonder, what next? What next? What next? No such ambivalence in your brother, though, who takes one long step closer and busts several shots through the window. By luck or grace or sinner's faith, the shots miss your ace boon coon, but hit the white boy in the arm. Or was it the leg? You'll be mighty, mighty thankful years later that the white boy didn't die and that nobody involved the police, because you believe with all of your softened heart that killing a white boy would have been the end of your freedom, or just to say the end of any life you could stand. Or could it have been when you were living on the fumes of hip slick cool, that time in the throes of your addiction that you slept into a dope house with umpteen days worth of dirty clothes stuffed in a duffel bag, and spend days puffing rocks with one of your ace boon coons and reminiscing on the years when you wanted nothing more than pull a Cadillac with automatic shut-off lights off the showroom floor, back when there was little more important than you to lay claim to woman galore, back when you dreamed of traveling to big places and owning a big house on the hill. You shamble into the bathroom to piss and find a toilet bowl chocked with shit and toilet paper. You squeeze off your breath and close your eyes and piss and wash your hands and reach to dry them and see shit smeared all over the hand towel. And at the speed of a fresh high, you feel every bit of what you become. You slump out of the bathroom into the room where your old ace boon gropes his pipe. That's it for me, man, you say. I ain't using no more. You grab your duffel and slog out the door. Don't stop till you reach your sister's house, the same sister who at the time has miracled 2 years clean. She answers and gazes at you and steps aside. Sis, I don't want to do this no more, you say. I know you know how to do it. What should I do? She raises a hand and whisks into another room and returns carrying towels. Here, she says, the first thing you need to do is take a bath. Okay, that's my stab at a second person narrative. Thank you to everyone for bringing me out here. Thanks to Rion for that amazing intro and shouting out. I got some Sakai Nikes on. I wish I could show them to y'all, but look them up, the black and white ones.
Thank you so much to our two readers, Cristina and Mitchell. We are just so lucky to have you with us today, to be transformed by your work. I think we're all really looking forward to your forthcoming fiction. That's great. So thank you so much. I wish that we could all, stand. I think if we were in Ulrich today, there'd be a standing ovation. You'd hear tons of clapping and shouting. So I wish you could hear all of that. And thanks to everyone who attended today and listened with us. I just have one reminder. We have Writers Here Now faculty reading on April 1st at 3:30, featuring Terry Ellen Cross Davis, Maud Casey, Nicole Cuffey, and Rion Almicar Scott. So join us for that. And have a great rest of the day. Thank you so much to everyone.